The sirens came without warning, a wall of mechanical sound that rose over Tel Aviv and rolled outward across the coastal plain in a single, unbroken wave. Mobile phones across central Israel lit up with emergency alerts. The message was immediate and unmistakable. Ballistic missiles inbound. Millions of Israelis moved fast down stairwells, into reinforced safe rooms, into the concrete shelters embedded beneath apartment buildings, hospitals, and schools. Seconds later, the sky fractured. White streaks of interceptor missiles climbed hard above the city's rooftops, and the first detonations began rolling across the metropolitan area in concussive waves. Glass cracked, buildings shuddered, and then through the intercepts, through the fire and light of defensive engagement, some of those missiles broke through. At least 30 ballistic projectiles launched from deep inside Iranian territory by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps were aimed not at open fields or uninhabited coastline, but at the precise coordinates of Israel's military command architecture, the IDF General Staff headquarters at HaKirya in central Tel Aviv, the strategically critical Palmachim Airbase south of the city, and the compound of the Shin Bet Internal Security Service, the men and women who run Israel's wars, its air defenses, and its intelligence. Operations had just been placed in the crosshairs of an Iranian missile barrage. This was not simply a missile strike, it was a direct assault on the operational command structure of the Israeli state, a signal to every capital on earth that Iran remained both willing and capable of targeting the very brain of its enemy's military apparatus. According to Iranian state media, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps described the salvo as a precision retaliatory strike, a direct, proportionate, and legally justified response to the joint American and Israeli operation launched on February 28, 2026, which Iranian officials characterized as unprovoked aggression against the sovereignty of the Iranian nation. Iranian military spokesman stated that the missiles used in the barrage included advanced ballistic variants specifically engineered to defeat the Arrow 3 and David Sling interceptor systems that form the upper tiers of Israel's air defense network. IRGC commanders claimed the strike successfully penetrated those defenses and delivered munitions onto targets of the highest military significance. Iranian state broadcaster Press TV broadcast footage purporting to show smoke rising from the vicinity of the HaKirya compound, the address in central Tel Aviv that houses the headquarters of the Israel Defense Forces General Staff. Iranian Deputy Foreign Minister Hamid Ghanbari, speaking to Al Jazeera, stated that Iran was exercising its right to self-defense under international law and affirmed Tehran's resolve to continue operations until hostilities against Iran ceased entirely. In a formal letter to Secretary General Antonio Guterres, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi declared that Iran would act, in his words, decisively and without hesitation for as long as necessary. The IRGC issued its own unambiguous statement. The operation, it said, would continue relentlessly until the enemy is decisively defeated, according to Iranian officials targeting the IDF General Staff, Palmachim Airbase, and Shin Bet simultaneously was deliberated demonstration that no coordinate within Israel's security establishment lay beyond Iran's reach, but the story quickly became far more complicated. Before we break down exactly how Israel's layered defense systems responded to this barrage and what the ground truth of this strike actually reveals, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you never miss the latest dramatic developments shaping global geopolitics. According to the Israel Defense Forces, the incoming Iranian salvo was engaged immediately by the full architecture of Israel's multi-tiered air defense network, Arrow 3 and Arrow 2 interceptors, David Sling batteries, and Iron Dome deployments around central Israel, all activated simultaneously. It is worth explaining precisely what these systems are and how they function, because the technical details matter enormously here. Arrow 3 is designed to intercept ballistic missiles in the upper atmosphere above the weather layer, above the debris field that results from a warhead's destruction, meaning detonation occurs far from populated areas. David Sling handles medium-range ballistic missiles and large rockets in the mid-tier. Iron Dome, the most publicly recognized component, targets short-range rockets and artillery at close range. Together, they form what military analysts describe as a layered kill chain, a sequence of intercept opportunities designed so that a missile defeating one layer faces immediate engagement by the next. According to Israeli authorities and U.S. media reports, the integrated system achieved an interception rate of between 85% and 95% across the broader campaign period. However, Israeli officials acknowledged that fragments and some intact warheads did reach Israeli territory. A missile struck a residential building in Tel Aviv, killing one woman and injuring dozens. Another missile earlier in the campaign hit a residential neighborhood in Beit Shemesh, killing 9 people. A former commander of Israel's Air and Missile Defense Forces, Ran Kochev, stated publicly that reassurances on Israeli television represented what he called false reassurance, warning that Israel's interceptor stockpiles had been significantly depleted during the June 2025 12-day war, and that what he described as Israel's inventory issues would produce casualties across the entire country. Between these narratives lies a complex reality that analysts are still working to understand. What exactly is HaKirya, and why does an Iranian missile targeted at it represent something categorically different from any other strike on Israeli soil? The answer begins with geography and ends with national survival. HaKirya, known formally as the Kirya, is the compound in central Tel Aviv that houses the headquarters of the Israel Defense Forces General Staff. It is, without exaggeration, the nerve center of the entire Israeli military. Every command authority, every senior officer, every operational decision that coordinates Israel's defense policy flows through that compound. The orders that send Israeli jets into the air, that activate missile defense batteries, that direct naval assets in the Mediterranean, all of them originate from within those walls. The compound also houses major elements of the Israeli Defense Ministry. To target it is not to strike a military facility in the conventional sense, is to aim directly at the institution responsible for every aspect of how Israel defends itself. Palmachim Airbase, the second named target in the Iranian salvo, adds a separate and equally significant dimension. Palmachim is home to Israeli missile defense testing and development operations, satellite launch activities, and strategic Air Force capabilities. It is where Israel refines and upgrades the very interceptor systems designed to stop Iranian missiles from reaching their targets. It is connected by analysts to advanced satellite reconnaissance operations that give Israel its long-range targeting intelligence advantage. The Shin Bet headquarters, Israel's internal security service, responsible for counterterrorism operations and intelligence collection inside Israeli territory and in adjacent areas, was also reportedly targeted in the broader campaign. According to analysts, the three targets selected by Iran formed a coherent and calculated pattern: neutralize the command brain, blind the defense testing infrastructure, and degrade the intelligence apparatus simultaneously. The message was clear. Iran had locked the crosshairs of its ballistic missile force onto the three addresses most central to Israel's ability to wage, sustain, and coordinate its own military operations. What does this strike mean for the immediate military picture and for every interconnected system that follows? The consequences cascade outward in layers, each one larger than the last. At the immediate military level, the Israel Defense Forces confirmed that the Israeli Air Force had dropped more than 1,200 munitions on targets inside Iran in the 24-hour period surrounding the strike, according to the Israeli news agency. TPS U.S. Central Command Admiral Brad Cooper, overseeing the American component of operations, stated publicly that his forces were hunting Iran's last remaining ballistic missile launchers in order to eliminate what he described as their lingering ballistic missile capability, according to CENTCOM reporting cited by the Jerusalem Post. The combined U.S.-Israeli effort had reduced Iran's missile launch rate by 86% within just 4 days of major operations beginning. On the first day of the conflict, February 28, 2026, Iran launched approximately 480 ballistic missiles. By the 10th day, that number had collapsed to approximately 40 launches per day, a reduction of 92% from peak capacity. The Wall Street Journal reported, citing analysts, that Iran's celebrated Missile Cities strategy, a network of underground launch facilities built over decades at enormous cost, had been transformed from a strategic asset into a liability. With constant drone surveillance now allowing U.S. and Israeli forces to monitor known facilities and strike launchers the moment activity was detected at their exits. That collapse in Iranian launch capacity has consequences far beyond the battlefield. At the regional level, Iran's retaliatory operations extended well beyond Israeli territory, striking U.S. military installations and Gulf state infrastructure across a broad theater, according to Al Jazeera, the U.S. Navy's Fifth Fleet headquarters. In Bahrain, the command center for all American naval operations in the Persian Gulf was targeted by a missile attack. Ali Al-Salem Air Base in Kuwait, hosting U.S. forces, was struck by multiple ballistic missiles. Qatar was forced to declare force majeure on its liquefied natural gas export operations after Iranian drone attacks hit key facilities, a decision with immediate consequences given that Qatar supplies approximately 20% of global LNG. Saudi Arabia's Ras Tanura refinery and crude export terminal, one of the planet's largest oil export facilities, closed following attacks, with damage assessments still ongoing. Saudi Arabia condemned what it described as blatant Iranian aggression against Gulf states and expressed readiness to support affected nations with all available resources. That regional disruption has economic consequences measured in hundreds of billions of dollars. Global oil prices surged by more than 25% from the conflict's opening day, according to Al Jazeera's energy market reporting. U.S. crude oil settled just below $91 per barrel, its largest weekly gain since records began in 1983, according to Reuters. Goldman Sachs warned publicly that prices could climb above $100 per barrel if Strait of Hormuz shipping disruptions continued. The conflict had already suspended approximately 1/5 of global crude and natural gas supply. Fuel prices climbed, food transport costs rose. consumer goods shipping expenses surged. The American Automobile Association reported the national average gasoline price in the United States had risen by 43 cents in a single week to $3.41 per gallon. At the diplomatic level, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres condemned the full arc of the escalation and called for an immediate cessation of hostilities. Russia condemned the original U.S.-Israeli strikes and warned the conflict could spill over far beyond its borders. France, Germany, and the United Kingdom jointly stated they had not participated in the operation and urged Iran to seek a negotiated solution. Pointed diplomatic distancing from Washington's position at the domestic political level inside the United States. Alina Habba stated publicly on Newsmax that Americans would see President Trump's strength in the next coming days like you have never seen, confirming that Trump had warned Iran before hostilities began, analysts noted. However, that the surge in fuel prices and America's deepening entanglement in an active regional war represented a significant political vulnerability for the administration heading into the midterm election cycle. Iran maintains that every missile aimed at Tel Aviv's military compounds was a lawful act of self-defense against an illegal and existential assault on Iranian sovereignty. Israel and the United States maintain that the joint operation was a necessary and proportionate action to prevent Iran from reaching nuclear breakout, to dismantle decades of proxy war infrastructure, and to neutralize a regime that had openly declared its intent to destroy both nations. What is unfolding across the skies of Tel Aviv, the waters of the Persian Gulf, and the degraded launch networks of Iran is not a confrontation that will resolve itself cleanly. It is the product of decades of accumulated grievance, failed diplomacy, and strategic miscalculation arriving at a single violent convergence point. The Iranian decision to target HaKirya, Palmachim, and the Shin Bet compound in a single coordinated salvo crossed a threshold that has no quiet precedent in the history of this conflict, and it has done so at a moment when Iran's ability to sustain large-scale missile operations is measurably and rapidly declining. That combination, diminishing capacity paired with escalating targeting ambition, is precisely the combination that keeps military analysts awake at night, a force aware of its own diminishment with decentralized command authority and no clear political leadership left to authorize restraint, is a force whose next move no intelligence service on Earth can predict with confidence. Will this 30-missile strike on Israel's key defense sites prove to be the high-water mark of Iranian retaliation, or is it the signal that the most dangerous and unpredictable phase of this conflict is only just beginning? Stay tuned for further updates as this situation continues to develop, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss the latest dramatic geopolitical developments shaping the world.